it in his mouth.
Chewing tobacco.
He'd pull out. He'd pull out a wad. You get stung, you know, and you start hollering. He'd suck the juice out of some of his day's work that he always had in his mouth. He'd just grab a chunk and hold it on there for about 5 minutes. That's what he'd tell you. Hold it on for 5 minutes, get the swelling out, and it worked.
Now,
Bee sting though was better than the chewing tobacco.
Oh, absolutely.
didn't Brother Charlie help with the bees as well?
Well, let me tell y'all how it was. Daddy wanted us to have the bees really bad. But Daddy was the worst man that you could have around bees. Any bee that got close to him,
He batted it.
he'd swat at it. And that's one thing you don't want to have is them fast movements around bees, swatting at them. So you could see Daddy on his tractor when he got a tractor. And he'd be out there in the field on the tractor running it. And then you'd see, the tractor would stop, Daddy would get off the tractor and run. The bees had done run him off the tractor. But the whole reason was because he was swatting at them.
That's right.
And you could not tell him, don't swat the bees. And another one that was just like it was Brother Charlie. I was the bee man with Charlie. It was a terrible thing to be a bee man around Charlie.
He was not a good bee man.
He was swatting at the bees from the time he got out there. And them fast movements, the bees come after you.
Bees like to sting, Charlie.
So they'd run you. You'd end up running. And, I mean, Daddy loved them bees. He liked that honey. And he liked to have them down there to pollinate. But he was the worst man around bees, except probably for Charlie.
Yeah.
Now, would you mind telling us the story of the time Grandpa wanted the bees picked up and put on racks?
Well, there's a long history to Daddy moving bees around. When we first started, we had them, I don't remember exactly where we had them, but
Had them under that old pear tree.
we had them, he wanted them, they were bothering him too much. So we had to put them by the railroad. Remember when we had them right by the railroad?
Yeah.
Far from the house as we could get them. And right against that fence. And I don't know why, but we moved them up closer to the house.
Moved them back over there behind the fig trees.
By the fig tree, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But it was always, it had to be moved.
Well, didn't y'all have a stand collapse on y'all during a movement at one time?
Have a what?
One of your stands y'all were putting them on, didn't it?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Daddy had built these stands, and he had pipe. I don't remember the pipe was too small, and the beehives get really heavy. They get to where them things will weigh 100, 150 pounds.
Well, they'll get over 200 or 300
And
pounds.
so depends on how much
They're full of honey.
Yes, sir.
you had in them and how high you had them stacked. Well, Daddy had a stacking them up there, and the next thing you know, the pipe broke. And the pipe broke, remember that? I guess four hives fell. Opened up, you know, separated, and
Honey all over the place.
we tried to get, it was me and Charlie, and I said, let's get them, brother, and then put them back together real quick. And not with Brother Charlie. Brother Charlie started swatting at them. Next thing you know, I saw them bees on that hive, and the next thing you know, that swarm of bees come up and got on us. And the only thing we could do was run. And we was doing all that before school in the morning, because Daddy wanted to move these bees. So there was always a lot of bee movement.
Now, is it true that y'all was locked out of the house?
Oh yeah, we
don't
headed
know.
for the house that same morning when all them bees was on us, and Daddy saw us coming. So he locked the door.
Oh my.
So we ran around to the other side of the house and got in the back door in where our bedroom was.
Did you witness any of this?
I witnessed, yes. Yeah, like I said, I was witnessing it I was probably, when that happened, I was probably, you were probably 15.
Probably something.
So I was probably 7 or 8. You know, because there's a difference between our age, and and Charlie was a year younger than Oliver. And of course, in there we had Pat and Mike also in there. You know, the interesting thing in here is Daddy had the honey, and Oliver and them, you know, they robbed the bees when they needed to, and Daddy gave the honey away. He never sold any honey. He gave it away.
Now, would y'all mind trying to tell the story of when Uncle Charlie bought him a used car and it had bad tires on it? Something about his tires, and he brought honey to the girl.
I was standing there with Daddy and Charlie when Charlie was showing he was out. He had his little old coupe, and he went in, and like Charlie was going to see his girlfriend, but Daddy had another thought in there too. Well, bring Uncle Hop and ain't tea a gallon of honey.
Okay.
Drop some honey off with him, and so Charlie was going to go see his girlfriend in New Iberia, and Daddy went out there, and Charlie was showing him his car, and Daddy said, "Charlie, you can't go anywhere in this car. You're gonna have to put some new tires on it." He had eggs on 3 tires.
So he had just bought that
He had just got the car
from the junkyard.
Yeah, and the tires were dry rotted and also had eggs on them and on the front wheels. And Daddy told him, he said, "Charlie, you better not go." Charlie said, "Oh, I know it'll be all right because I've been riding it around, and I think it's going to be okay." And Charlie was one that's strong-headed, you know. Just because Daddy said something, you know, it didn't necessarily mean that in Charlie's mind that it was true. And Daddy was always right on the money, always. And Daddy told him, he said, "You ain't gonna make it to Lafayette, boy." Charlie said, I'll make it. So he jumps in the car, and he's dressed up now. He's dressed up. He's got his Sunday best on. It was Sunday morning, and he's gonna go to church over there. He's gonna drop off some honey and visit his girlfriend. And so he takes off, and Daddy just shaking his head. Charlie drives off, and about, I'd say 15, no more than 15 minutes, because I was sitting on the front porch. I was dressed for church, and I was sitting on the front porch, and a cop drives up. State trooper drives up into the front yard. He gets out of the car. He's got a big old smile on his face. And I said, "Oh well." And he gets out of his side, he opens the door, and there's this person is in the back seat. And you had to look good to tell it was Charlie. He had a gash on his head, and there was blood, and he was full of honey.
From his head
From his head all the way down. That gallon of honey had busted. He turned the car over. The cop had put a bunch of, obviously had some newspaper. He had put newspaper down all over in the back seat, and Charlie was sitting on that newspaper, and when he got out of the car, the newspaper was stuck to him. And Daddy came out of the house and said, "I told you, boy. Where's the car?" Charlie said, "I made it to the curve up there. First curve." He was about a half a mile from the house. Turned the car over, totaled it. Totaled his car. He had just paid, I don't know, I think $400 or something.
Yeah, $300 or $400 for it.
But
Didn't you tell me that he would pay y'all 10 cents or something to catch hives.
That's an interesting story there. And I think you and Charlie had gone into the service at that time, and Mike and Pat had kind of taken over the bees. And there's another story before that, but I'm gonna tell this one. Daddy was given 50 cents. If we could capture a hive, he'd give us 50 cents. Well, I wasn't in the hive capturing business. I was an innocent bystander to all of this. I was watching. I was a watcher. It cost 38 cents to go to the show at Scott. If you were an adult. Pat was an adult. Mike, I think Mike was small for his age. He might have still got in for a child for 9 cents. It cost 9 cents for a kid and 38 cents, and they wanted to go to the show. And they had a hive swarming in a China ball tree. You know how a China ball tree is? We use the China berry to smoke meat.
The wood.
The wood was good for smoking. And they saw that hive up in that China ball tree, and they decided that they were going to capture that hive. So Pat had the saw. It was on a limb, and the limb was bent over. They were sitting. If you could picture how a China ball tree looks, you got the branch, and then out on the end of the branch you had your berries and your leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And this hive was in the berries and the leaves, and that branch was bent over, had a big bow in it, and it wasn't that big a branch.
In the hive, with the bees swarm in it, they make a ball, and they all land on each other.
They all on each other.
You have a big old ball of bees, is what you
There's
have.
a big ball of bees up there, and this thing was about probably 20 feet off, 15, 20 feet off the ground. So they climbed the tree. Mike had the hive.
The box.
The box. He had the box, and they had they had some frames in it with some, you know how you put the wax on it.
Foundation.
Yeah, they had that there, and Mike was doing it. What they didn't consider is that when you saw it, it's not just going to saw and fall straight down. Well, when you got close to cutting it through, that thing swung down, and the beehive hit the trunk of the tree, and missed. Mike didn't even come close to the hive, but it busted. It hit the trunk of the tree right there. Pat's above it, and Mike's below it, and they started hustling to get out of that tree because the bees got all over. And I think one of them got stung 25 or 30 times. And the other one, they both got stung a lot, scampering down that tree. And they, of course, they did what everybody does: they take off running, but that was the end of that story. They didn't get their 50 cents. They didn't get to go to the movie. But that was and they did catch. They got some hives. They got some. Every now and then they would get one, and Dad would give them a little bit of change, you know. Mm-hmm. It was interesting, but from my standpoint, the most interesting thing about all of the honey and stuff was when Oliver and Charlie, and I guess Dad, I don't know who paid for it, they bought the extractor. They bought a honey extractor. And it would handle. I think y'all bought it from Sears, if I'm not mistaken.
Me and Charlie bought
it. They got it. It was a little old barrel, about that big around, and it handled. I think it handled 4 frames, either 3 or 4 frames.
4 frames.
And you had a place to set it in, and you had a hand crank that you turn. And what they would do, they would pull a deal out, and I think they would cap it with a knife.
You have to uncap it.
Yeah, they would uncap it,
so.
and then they would stick it in the little old extractor, and they would turn the handle. They had a cockpit at the bottom, and when you were finished extracting, well, you would open it up and you could put it in jars or whatever. And that was interesting because that little extract, it was, and it worked great because it used centrifugal force. It just threw the honey out to the side. You just turn it, the faster you turned it, the more quicker it threw it out and then went to the bottom. But there was always, you know, there was always a bee
In the honey.
in the honey. And you think, as a kid, I got stung. Every time they extracted honey, I would get stung by a bee in the honey. You'd think, well, the bee's dead. But the bees ain't, they're down in that honey, you think they're dead. They may be drowning, they may be almost dead, but they still sting.
Oh yeah.
And I always got stung. Every time they extracted honey, I always got stung.
Remember when we had brought some honey in, it was just been extracted, and he was eating breakfast and he got some of that honey. He said, give me some of that honey. And so he poured him out some, and he had a biscuit or something there, and he put some honey on there, and he was eating that biscuit. The bee stung him on the tongue.
Daddy, he didn't.
He come to Mama, wanting Mama to get the stinger out. The stinger was stuck up in his tongue. You know how that bee stinger is. And Mama got to laugh and she couldn't do anything. Hey, Daddy, bad. I had to get the stinger out of his tongue.
Daddy got stung twice on the tongue. He got stung that time, and another time
Orange juice.
we had a beehive in the wall of the kitchen at the poorhouse. Okay, and down in that corner in the back kitchen, in the kitchen where you come into the side door back in that corner, and there were always had 15, maybe 20 bees in the kitchen with you. You know, of course we didn't. Bees didn't
stay by the window.
Bother. Yeah, they stayed around there, and
they had found a passageway to get from where the hive is back into the kitchen.
Right, and Daddy liked to make that frozen orange juice and had those little cans. And after he made the frozen, he made it every day, and he'd drink this orange juice all day. And he'd put the can down over there by the window, and he would drink out of that can, drink water out of that can all day long. He had his juice, and he'd use that can. That was like his glass. And he came in there one day, and he had made his orange juice, and he came in from working out in the garden, and threw it back, and a bee stung him on the tongue. And
I remember that, and I remember what Grandpa said. He said he drank some of that orange juice and he felt something, and he thought to himself, oh, a piece of pulp. And he kind of licked it around in his mouth with his tongue, and that wasn't a piece of pulp, it was a honeybee.
It was a honeybee.
And it stung him on the tongue.
And the stinger stayed in his tongue, and he had to get this another time, he had to get Mama to pull it out.
Well, one thing that happened, didn't you have something else you was going to say? Or was that it? About the bees?
I asked you about the 50 cents for the hive. You said there's another story before that, but I'll tell this one first.
Oh, that was the extractor.
Okay.
Getting that extracted. To me, that was a major deal. It's like, I remember when they used to, before you got the extractor, they would they would go out there and get the honey. And I think y'all borrowed a smoke deal from Mr. Green.
Yeah.
The first time.
Smoke pot.
Little smoke pot from Mr. Green, and to make the bees dormant so they could go in there and get it. But they didn't have, they were robbing the bees. They had no clothes. In other words, what they did, I remember y'all would they put on long sleeve flannel shirts and stuff, and they tied with string right here.
Yeah.
And then they would put on gloves, and they borrowed regular old work gloves, and they put and they borrowed the smoke pot from Mr. Green.
Y'all had veils though, bee veils.
Yeah,
not at the beginning they did.
we had to have them. How we do it?
They had long clothes. They put on clothes.
Yeah,
long
but you had
clothes.
to pay.
Oh, the head deal, yeah. Yeah, they had that. I think you borrowed that. The first time y'all did it, y'all got that stuff from Mr. Green.
You probably
He let
did.
y'all borrow it. And but when they bought the extractor, that was kind of a different. Then I think when y'all bought the extractor, you bought the headgear, and y'all had your own smoke pot.
Yeah.
And everything. Now when Pat and Mike climbed up in that tree to get them high, they didn't have any smoke pot. And tell me this, brother. I never knew, but we used to do it. What was the significance of taking something and beating on a bucket, make a clanging sound? Because I remember that when we were kids, Daddy said Daddy told us to do that, and it would make the bees.
If a swarm's in flight,
Yeah.
that's supposed to make the swarm land.
Okay, 'cause we did that. I remember doing that. I remember getting having an old pot, and getting a Hammond and beating on that pot to make the swarms to make it come in, you know, and it must have worked. I don't know whether it did or not. We did that. A lot of people, I'll tell you what, a lot of people around there, relatives and other people, ate our honey.
How many hives did y'all have?
I don't know. I don't remember now. Probably close to 100 hives. Huh?
I remember 30 or 40 hives at one time, but I don't remember.
I think we had more.
Probably had more than that.
Yeah, we probably had 50, at least 50 or 60.
That's a bunch of hives.
A lot of work.
When they robbed bees, that was
Daddy started selling the honey in front of the house.
yeah.
And so he wanted more hives. So we probably got up, I think, close to 100 hives. So we were selling a good bit of honey.
Off the subject, people still know about y'all. When I'm giving, sometimes I give samples out in Sam's, and there'll be an old person. I'm not calling y'all old, but there'll be a real old person, and they'll say, "Are y'all the Carmichaels from Scott? Y'all used to do honey back then, way back in Scott." And I tell them, yeah, it's the same family. They still remember that, people do.
We would sell honey to the school,
That's right, I forgot about that.
and they served it in the cafeteria. Yeah.
I remember when, as a boy, we lived in town on Farming Drive by Lafayette High. Why don't you tell us about that? Can you remember that pretty good?
Well, we try to remember how all that started. Oh yeah, Joel was just a little kid, but he knew some of the bee stories. And one morning, we woke up and we had a little old bush in the front yard, and they had a swarm of bees, a ball of bees in that bush. And it was before school, and Joel went out there and he saw them bees, and he wanted to catch the swarm. And we didn't have nothing to put them in. So right down the street they had that big grocery store on the corner. What was the name of it?
Kroger's.
Kroger's or something. And they had them, they would get fryers and packed in ice, and they were in a cardboard box, a heavy waxed cardboard box, and they had a little window-like things about an inch or two at the bottom all around, so that when the ice melted, the water could come out. And so we didn't have nothing, so I thought about them boxes. Then we went up there on the corner and got one of them boxes and came over there and we caught that swarm of bees in that box. And we had them there until we got a hive, I don't remember. And but while we were living on Foreman Drive right there by Lafayette High, we had what, probably, and we moved them to the back, we probably had 50 hives there, probably.
We had a few. We had a good many. What I remember is we had that hive in that box, and Dad said, well, if we're gonna fool with bees, we can't do nothing with these bees in a box like this. He said we need a beehive with removable frames. So Dad ordered a couple of hives from Sears, and ordered a bee veil, and ordered us a few little things that we needed, and we sat out there under the camphor ball tree at Grandpa's, and we put them hives together. And we got them ready, and we caught some swarms, and we put them swarms in there. He got us a smoker, and he got us a couple bee veils, and Mama would actually take me every now and then after a while, and we'd get more and more bees from more and more hives from Sears. We never bought any bees, and we'd catch these swarms, and we had them in the front yard there on Foreman Drive, and Dad got us a 2-frame extractor. You didn't turn it like this, you turned it from the top, and it would hold 2 frames. And after a while, we moved them bees to Grandpa's, the first bunch of them, and we put them in the back by the tracks.
Yeah, up there on the Scott Road.
That's right. And then y'all bought this place, and y'all was building a house, and I had accumulated another bunch of bees in the front yard. So we moved them here at this house, and we moved them right here, right out the door here. This house was under construction, and these carpenters started complaining because they were getting stung. And I can still remember this well. We moved these bees to the back,
back to the back fence.
That's correct. Now that I'm a beekeeper, I realize what a stupid thing we did. When you move bees, you need to move bees a distance, because and I also remember the movement. It was Daddy and me, and we had another adult, and Uncle John was here, and he drove the truck. Uncle John said, I'm not touching a beehive, but I'm gonna roll up the windows and I'll drive the truck. And we'd set them on the tailgate, and I don't know, we made 3 or 4 loads, and we got them back there. Well, I didn't hear any more from the carpenters or anything like that, because I was a boy. But could you imagine when them bees woke up the next morning and they flew out? They didn't go back there where they moved them. They all came here where they used to live, because that's what bees do. And I can just imagine that them carpenters got ate up pretty good, but they really couldn't say a whole lot because the bees were gone. You know, so in their minds, they figured, well, the bees are gone. I don't know what happened with that, but thinking back on it, them bees needed to be moved plumb on out of here at night.
Yeah,
So how did you get started again? Because we missed all that. You weren't in the camera.
Well, when I was a boy, we lived on Foreman Drive, and Dad came home from work, and it might have been in the morning, in the afternoon. I think it was in the afternoon, and there was a swarm. I didn't see it. Dad saw it, and it was in a sycamore tree in the front yard, and it was up about 15 foot, somewhere up in there. And I remember going to Kroger's, and we got the wax coated box, the chicken box. And first we sat down and we ate, and Daddy talked about the swarm. We ate at 5 o'clock normally, because Mama had everything ready at 5, and that was a big deal. You had to eat at 5 o'clock.
That's when I used to cook.
Anyway, we talked about it at dinner that night, and I told Dad, I said, well, that's really neat. We have us a beehive. And Dad said, no, it's gonna leave. It's a swarm. It's not gonna stay. So I wanted it. I wanted to get it. Didn't want it to leave. I'm no good at this.
You're good. Just keep on.
So that's when we went to the store. We got the box. I didn't know what he was going to do. He put that box under that swarm, and he kind of looked at the swarm, and he put it up under there, and he got it right there. And in the back of the house was a galvanized antenna pole. It was a 1-inch, it was laying on the side of the house. It was a 1-inch galvanized antenna pole. Back in that day and time,
Television.
for television, there was no satellite. So that antenna pole had some braces on it where you'd bolt it to the house when it come up out the ground. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
He went out there and he cut hold to that pole and he put that brace on that limb of that sycamore tree. And Dad he was strong, you know, he was a tough, strong man. And boy, I could still see the muscles in his arms. And he pulled that limb, and what he was doing is making sure he had a good hold of it.
Right.
And that's why he was doing that. And when he knew he had a good hold, boy, he yanked that thing. And that swarm of bees fell. They fell in the box, they fell on the ground, they fell all around there, and then he went out there. He didn't have no suit or nothing. He got that lid to that box, and he kind of put it on a little bit, about halfway, and then bees started crawling up in that box. Every one of them went up in there. And we had a cardboard box with bees that we couldn't do nothing with. But it gave us more swarms.
Yeah.
But we had a young boy that wanted a swarm of bees.
And we had it. And we fooled with that old cardboard box, and that's when he said we need to get us some hives we can eat, sell it, and save it in a cigar box in the closet. And we was going to buy, I think it was 15 or 20 hives one Saturday morning in Leroy, and we was leaving it was dark. And I got up and I went in there to get my money, and it was gone.
I remember that.
And I woke Shelly up. I says, I need my money. Where's my money? And she started crying, and she told me she borrowed it. So I had a fit, you know. And about that time, to answer your question, I figured when we ran that ad in the quick water and we started buying bees, is about that time I thought, well, we're going to try to do something with bees that's more than play around, which playing around is great, but that's where you start. But anyway, I talked to Dad about it. I called him, and he was here at his house, and he was waiting on me to come pick him up. Well, he started laughing. He thought that was hilarious. So he told me to come on. He'd loaned me the money. So I was kind of mad and halfway beside myself, you know, embarrassed. So he helped me, and he came into the bee business with me, and a great partner, because he'd help you for free. And he owned half the bees, and he never wanted anything from it. He just helping me, you know. And he'd help us a lot. Boy, he helped us rob bees, and we got to where we had probably 1,500 hives, and he was helping me every Saturday, and anybody else I could get to help me, and we just got like that, and we finally got some full-time help. And you know, you blink your eyes twice and you wake up and you're sitting there with 10,000 beehives and a bunch of people from Nicaragua helping you work with the bees, and a big honey business. And then, you know, y'all know Nathan's selling the honey now, and under Carmichael's honey, and
In the stores.
in the stores. And started back with this family, he knew enough about bees to catch a swarm.
Yeah.
In an old cardboard box.
And I knew where to get them boxes.
Knew where to get them boxes.
That the family has. You know, if the family hadn't have had love,
That's right.
this bee business
It wouldn't
may not
happen.
have happened. You know, you were giving love to your son by helping him and getting the first hive. And look where it has ended up at this point.
Well,
I mean, it's a thriving business. And you know, and when I look at the way this business has started, I see not just love, but I see God in this business.
that's exactly right. That's what I was gonna say.
He's in it.
And the other lesson here is you never know what you got
That's right.
with a kid.
That's right.
Never know. Back then I was now I'm an old fat man. Back then I was a little fat boy. And no, it's true. And they told me I had something wrong with me and I couldn't learn right. And they brought me to all these scientists and doctors. And one day Grandpa told me under the camphor ball tree, don't listen to any of that, boy. He called me man.
Yep.
He said, don't listen to any of that, man. There's nothing wrong with you. Don't believe a word of that. He said, you just see things different.
That's it.
And I learned since then that people in this world just make up names as they need them and label people, and a lot of it is because the people are different. And there's really nothing wrong with the people at all. And there was nothing wrong with me. I just saw things different. I saw it from the other side. It's hard to explain.
You were just smarter.
No, in a lot of ways you are smarter. In
Yeah.
a lot of ways you are smarter than these people that are normal, because you're probably more normal than they are. You know, you can just think of this as not on the bee thing, but you can just think of this as such a true thing. I can remember when bipolar was invented. I
Yeah,
can
I
remember
remember
when bipolar was
Yeah.
invented.
I
What?
remember when they said you,
They said I was
bipolar.
Dyslexic.
dyslexic.
Yeah.
Said I was dyslexic. You know, that when I pick up a book today, I don't ever look at the front. I go to the back and I flip back through it the other way because I want to see what's going on.
I'd say that those bees, they didn't care whether you were dyslexic or not.
They don't care. But anyway, that's kind of what happened with that deal, and it just grew into what it is today, and it's still growing, and it's what Uncle Bill said. God's blessing it.
Now, how many? You got 10,000 now.
We should have around 10,000 right now.
How many pounds of honey a year?
Figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, if you get 80 pounds, if you get 100 pounds,
Close to
it
a
just
million.
depends on what your average comes up to.
Yeah.
100 pounds of hive and you got 10,000 hives. That's a lot of honey.
It's a lot of honey.
And you ship it out by the carload, right?
We ship it out by tank of loads.
Tank of load.
Nathan takes most of it now, and he takes it in totes. You know, big old plastic totes.
And then there was a
They
time.
have, when they first started, you had a little bit storage around the beehive, but where you're doing all your extracting and stuff. Now you got what, 400? You had 400 barrel tanks.
Now we got 4 big old tanks, And we store honey in.
400 barrel oil field tanks is what we had. You still got some of them?
Oh yeah, we still got them. And
Did one of the neighbors not too far from the poorhouse, did they have honey? They had hives?
that was Mr. Green.
Mr. Green.
Mr. Green,
Yeah,
that's
Mr.
right.
Green.
You also, if I'm remembering right, at one point, you even took your bees to California.
We still take bees out every now and then.
Bees out to pollinate.
Pollinate,
You
that's
paid for
another
the,
thing.
you get paid for your bees to pollinate somebody else's crop, plus you get the honey that they make to extract and sell.
That's right.
So that's a kind of like a double whammy there, which would be which I find to be very interesting. That and I often wonder, why would people do that? Why don't they have a few hives for themselves to pollinate rather than to pay somebody to bring truckloads of bees and let's set them out there to pollinate? And then of course you've got to go back and you've got to get them, and they pay for all of that.
They pay for all of that. That's mostly almonds is what they pollinate. And it's a big high dollar crop, and it makes a lot more almonds when you put the bees on.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes about 2 million hives to pollinate the almonds in California.
Wow.
You need about 3 hives to the acre, 2 hives to the acre.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes, it's just, you can't keep that many hives in that area. There's nothing for them to live on after the almonds are
Right.
gone.
So
So
you
they
gotta-
want them in it and they want them out. And they pay a lot of money for it.
By the time we were old enough to work, you know, he had started beekeeping in '83 and I was born in '86, so he had been commercially keeping bees for 3 years by the time I came along.
Yeah, when the boys got of age, which for me, of age meant about 6 years old, we let them move fume boards in the yards. And they helped split and everything else like that, mainly because the work was all done mostly on the weekends. Because I was working full time and then working bees every weekend. A lot of time I'd take off on Friday and work, and I'd get these boys Friday after school and some days after school and Saturdays. And we got them some little bee suits and put them in there and brought them in the yards with us. And when we take the honey off in the summertime, that was an everyday deal. And they had to work, and of course, you know, they didn't want to work a lot of times, and really didn't give them no choice. Old way of saying it, and a lot of people may not understand this, is if you wanted to put your feet under the table at my house, you had to work bees. And of course I paid them though. I did not ask them to work for free. I paid them. And a lot of the time what we do is we watch their hours all summer, and at the end of the summer when I sold my honey, we'd pay them then and we'd pay them then at that point in time, and it was really a pretty nice deal because it ended up being a nice little lump sum of money. And of course their friends would come help sometimes, because we really and truly we were at a point there when the boys got old, as they could do more. We needed them out of desperation, because we didn't have any help, and it was hard to get anybody to do this kind of work, because it's hard work, it's hot work. You got all that clothing on you, and you're out there in the middle of the summertime. And anybody that's ever done it knows what I'm talking about. And if you've never done it, then it's hard to imagine something as bad and hard as that is. But these boys, you know, they grew up and they got tough. I remember I had a lot of trouble with the mama, because the mama thought I worked them too hard and made them work too much. But see me.
You learn work ethic. You learn how to work, and nobody else our age was learning how to work because they weren't made to work.
No.
And you know, growing up, you know, Dad paid you a little bit. You know, it wasn't much money, but he paid you a little bit. But that was back when Grandpa was still helping. But the real payment was, you know, on the weekend, you knew he was going to be working because he had all these hives. And you didn't have a choice. He had to work. And if you wanted to spend time with your dad, you worked with him. That's just that, and that was the real payment. You got a little bit of money, but you spent time with Dad, and you got to see Dad. He was like a hero. You know, he's out there on the weekends working, and you'd follow him around the bee yard with a smoking apparatus. You're 5 or 6 years old. You can't do anything, really. But you wanted to spend time with your dad, and that's, it was like a bond there. You know, I remember, and we were really a real part of the business as we got older. You know, where we got to where we could work. I remember growing up, I was a boxer. And I was a Golden Gloves boxer, and Dad, you remember when they flood? The airport yard flooded. And Dad woke me up early in the morning. He said, "We need your help, man. We have a bee yard that's drowning." And Grandpa was with us, and Grandpa had an old boat. Remember that? Yeah. And we got the hives, and it was me and Dad and Grandpa, and we'd put the hives on the boat, and we'd float them to safety. And I had a fight that night. It was a big deal, you know, because you want to rest when you have a boxing match. It's, you know, but here we are. We're out here working, and we worked all day. And we went and fought. I think I won the fight.
Yeah, we worked all day, and I had to go. I didn't think he'd come to the fight, but I had to go because I drove the team, and I helped Mr. Stutes. I was an assistant coach. Of course, we had old Shelton. Shelton was really the assistant coach. I was probably the third man down, but I had a big vehicle, and I'd drive. And we went out there, and he wanted to come, and I told him, "He's going to want to fight. He's been working hard all day," and he wanted to come. And we got out there, and we matched him and got him ready to fight. And he started whimpering along there like a titty baby. But he didn't know. I said, "Well, you either gonna fight or you gonna forfeit it and lose it. You just shouldn't get out there and try to fight." So he got there, and I was working the corner with him, and I said, "Just get up there and knock him out. You won't have to worry about it." When the first round came, at the end of the round, right at the end of the first round, Nathan hit him and knocked that boy's mouthpiece plumb out of his mouth, and came back to the corner, and bell rang for the second round. They threw in the towel. He had had enough.
Yeah, he didn't even come out. That was Opelousas, but it was a bad, you know, you'd been stung up all day working like that. And you didn't want to go fight a boxing match. You know, you was in pain. But you know, like you said, you knocked him out. You didn't even have to fight but a round. But
no, we was, you know, you get tough when you do that kind of work. At the end of the summer, when you get finished taking all that honey off, you're pretty tough, strong. You get strong doing that and tough. Get used to that heat and everything. But these boys were right in there with me every step of the way. They didn't have no choice. And then later on, we started hiring people from Nicaragua, and we still hiring them today. Been hiring them for years now. I think about 15 years. Bro.
Been a while, yeah.
Maybe longer. And we get the same guys, and they're great guys, and they're all legal, and they're good, and they know what to do, and we've trained them, and we're into their sons now, so we're into their second generation, and we've been getting them. And my boys, of course, Matthew helped too with the bees. And at one point in time, my wife was whining, and Matthew was whining because he had football practice, and it was hard on him because he had to take honey off. And I said, "Well, you just have to get tough." And he did, and he got an award that year. And the award was given by Coach Weiss, and it was the Toughest Nails Award.
I remember that. But growing up, I had, you know, you wanted to be like Dad, so you'd try to keep a beehive every now and then. You remember that?
Yeah.
he'd sell you a beehive, and you'd put it in the yard, you know, and it was your hive, and you'd take care of it. And we, you know, we did that on and off. You know, I had a hive. Probably the second time I had one, I was probably 10 or 11. I don't remember how old I was, but I was young, and we would keep the honey separate, and I'd bottle my honey, and I'd sell it to the neighbors. We'd sell it to people at church. You remember that, when I put it in that little room in the garage, and I had all them cases of honey in there? It was probably 20 cases of honey, you know, and maybe not that much, but it was a lot of honey, and I'd sell it to people, and it was always a dream to see it in the stores, but we never went that far with it. You know, Dad was selling it to, you know, food processors. You know, they was putting it in cereal bars and things like that. Even in college, remember when I had them hives, I gave you that yard. I forfeited the yard. You know, you'd get in and out of it. You'd get in it and you'd do it for a year or two, and then I'd turn them back over to Dad because I didn't want to mess with it. I like the bees, but I like the honey more. And in 2013, in July, in 2012, I had 25 hives. I split them out and I had about 50. In 2013, I was selling my honey with Dad. You know, I just put my honey in with his, and we'd sell it bulk to the food processors or what have you. And I decided that I wanted to bottle my honey. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And Papa said, well, if you want to bottle your honey, you need to do your own thing, because he didn't want to bottle honey. He just wanted to do like he had been doing, and that's when I started Carmichael's Honey LLC. And that year I remember when we got our first pallet of honey, I wondered, how am I going to sell all this honey? It's 132 cases of honey. And I was just like, how am I going to get rid of this? And I put a couple of cases in my truck, and I just started driving around, knocking on doors. And my wife was with me. I just got married. And she would tell me, she said, I could tell when you'd come out of the store if you had made the deal or not. You know, these little independent mom and pop stores, you drive in, you know, you'd sell a case of honey, and I'd go back every day and I'd check to see if anybody was buying it. And it was a real big deal. Every now and then there'd be a couple of bottles missing, and I'd get real excited somebody had bought our honey and taken it home. And that first year, I sold through all my honey and I ran out of honey. But Dad had thousands of hives, so I just bought honey from Dad, and we had it packed, you know, and that way we could keep the brand rolling. And things just started unfolding, you know, and we started picking up more and more independents. We started getting distribution. I didn't have, you know, there was at one time when I was doing all my own distribution, I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and I'd load up 100 and something cases of honey, and I'd leave, and I'd come back home at 6 that evening, and I'd do that 5 days a week. You know, you'd leave at 3 because the receiving docks for these grocery stores open up at 5, 6 a.m. Sometimes earlier. But as we got distribution, I kind of got out of that, and we started garnering attention from some of the big national distributors and some of the largest retailers in the world, and that's where we're at now. You know, we sell the honey in over 2,000 stores in 10 different states. And we have a Texas brand, we have a Louisiana brand, we have a national brand, we have a cinnamon honey, and we're just growing the business, you know, and he's growing his. And I buy the honey from him, I get it bulk, and we pack it and sell it. It's a raw, it's unfiltered. We don't filter any pollen or propolis or anything out of the honey. We strain it and get the wings and the legs and all that stuff out of it, because that's what people want. And you remember, there was light honey was a big deal for a long time. You know, the honey we make is a dark honey down south. For a long time it wasn't considered a table grade honey. It was
bakery.
It was a bakery grade honey. Yeah. And what we've done, and other people have done this too. We're not the only ones, but we've taken this, what they call a bakery grade honey, and people really like this stuff. And it's become a table grade honey, a household staple.
The dark honey was I always knew it would fly high, and it took people like Steve Bernard, Nathan, Nature's Nate's, Kelly's Honey Company, Jimmy Hutton, people like this, and there's many more like them that I don't know, that have put this dark southern tallow honey. It's a bottling honey now, and I think it will surpass your light honeys. I know a lot of you out there that are farming light honey don't believe it, but I think you're starting to believe it because it's starting to be pretty obvious. But I want to also say one thing before this is over with. I want to thank somebody, several people that's helped me quite a bit. Nellie Knockan, she's passed. She's not here anymore. She helped me when I started, showed me a lot, helped me do a lot of things. Charlie Harper lives in Carencro, Louisiana here. Charlie helped me a lot. Charlie will still help me today if I ask him. And he still does. He helps me with my scale and any other thing I need that he'll help me with. And, you know, and the most important, Jesus Christ is my friend.
Yeah. I agree.